Hello and welcome to another Big Finish review. Today we're continuing our look at the adventures of the 6th Doctor and Evelyn, as we look at their second release together, The Spectre of Lanyon, Moor, written by Nicholas Pegg. But before we get into the review itself, I'd just like to remind you, if you haven't already, I would greatly appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications to support this channel. If you enjoyed this review, give it a like and comment your thoughts on Spectre of Lanyon Moor below, and you can find and follow me on Twitter here. Now, this story in particular is fairly special for a couple of reasons, but most notably, it was recently named as one of the top 5 best 6th Doctor releases from Big Finish, specifically from the monthly range only and not including special releases like The Last Adventure. Now, why is that exactly? Is this story one of the best of all time? Or is there a certain element to this story, which if you've seen the cover you know what I'm talking about, that has raised it from being a fairly decent story to a fantastic story? Well, we're going to take a look at the plot, the characters, and see whether it deserves this high honour, or if there are other 6th Doctor stories which are definitely much stronger than this one. The Doctor and Evelyn Smythe arrive in the seemingly harmless Cornish countryside and get involved in an archaeological survey, as the team is attempting to investigate some mysterious electrical interference. Their investigation soon brings them to the famed legends and myths surrounding the Cornish countryside concerning the likes of goblins and fairies. They soon discover there may be more truth to these legends than it appears, and the interference is the result of a buried ancient evil desperate to escape and seek its revenge.
Up the airy mountain, down the rushy glen, we daren't go a-hunting for fear of little men.
In regards to the story itself, it's a fairly standard sort of Doctor Who plot, taking a famous myth or legend or unexplained historical event and giving it a sci-fi twist. Usually this is okay, though sometimes it's nice whenever they have the mythical creature actually be not an alien, but some sort of unexplained, maybe it is just some ghost, or maybe it is an actual goblin, and in this case they do go the route that the creatures in question are aliens. However, the fact that this is the case is revealed pretty much from scene 1, so it doesn't take forever to get to the obvious. So it isn't a bad story at all, it's a very solid, well-written adventure, but it is a trope and kind of setup that you have seen in lots of other Doctor Who stories. But that being the case, what is it about it that makes it so enjoyable? Well, firstly, it has to be the 6th Doctor and Evelyn. With certain stories, they are elevated by our main cast. Like, there are a lot of 2nd Doctor stories, like The Dominators, which aren't great, but Patrick Troughton and Fraser Hines, their dynamic ends up saving the story and making it much better, and it's the same for the Doctor and Evelyn here. They have such great chemistry. And in regards to the Doctor's arc being completed, as I said last week, we get to see Evelyn confront him on his abrasive and potentially condescending nature, which, although he doesn't intend to be harmful or unkind to people, it is his alien nature that makes him oblivious to other people's feelings, and thanks to her she is able to convince him to sort of change his ways, and as a result he is growing and becoming more likeable and mellow.
Mr. Morgan, have you ever heard the expression, only the used key shines?
You talking about?
Wherever I go in the universe, I invariably meet people like you, intelligent, knowledgeable people who, for reasons I can only guess at, reach a point in their lives when they arbitrarily decide to close their minds to anything new. You make it a point of personal pride to scoff, mock, and ridicule anybody who happens to inhabit a larger universe than the one in which you have chosen to imprison yourself. Well, that's your business. You may believe I'm talking nonsense, and I can't help what you personally choose to believe, but I do know this. The only way to learn is to keep your mind open to the input of those who are more knowledgeable than yourself.
Will you go downstairs and apologise to Professor Morgan?
What? What on earth for? The man's an idiot.
No, he isn't. He's a very clever man at the top of his profession who just doesn't understand what's going on.
What?
I'm not saying I don't agree with every word of what you said, because I do. But try and look at things from his point of view. Here he is, trying to run a nice, straightforward survey, and all of a sudden he's got doctors and brigadiers and pixies and goodness knows what cluttering the place up. And now this poor girl getting killed. Under the circumstances, you can't blame him for taking it out on us. It's a wonder the man hasn't gone completely doolally.
The episode does separate the Doctor and Evelyn for a good chunk of it, but that is not a bad thing at all, as it gives us an opportunity to see Evelyn on her own and how capable she is. Even in very dangerous situations, she's able to remain calm and strong, but doesn't come off as blasé or ignorant to the danger she's in. She's well aware of the seriousness of what's going on, but tries to remain confident despite everything.
How does the dissolution of morality fit in with some two-bit lordling with a screw loose getting ideas above his station?
Crowley, of all men, knew that his flock needed leadership. And a prophet, after all, is merely one who prepares the way for a Messiah.
Oh, I see. A Messiah. And that would be you, would it?
Have a care, Dr. Smythe. I am on the threshold of fulfilling my destiny.
Well, that's nice for you.
You mock me, but I smell the terror in your mind.
But ultimately, the key feature of this story that makes it so good, that raises it from decent to great, is the inclusion of Nicholas Courtney as the Brigadier. Much like Minuet in Hell, this story serves to complete the tradition of the Brigadier meeting each Doctor and finally having a proper team up between him and the sixth version of the character. Compared to Minuet in Hell, though, this is a much stronger Doctor-Brigadier dynamic, as they spend most of the story together, and Colin Baker and Nicholas Courtney bounce off each other excellently. This is definitely one of Nicholas Courtney's best performances, and it's so glad we managed to have these few stories before we sadly lost him.
Lethbridge Stewart, you old rogue, how are you?
I'm extremely well, thank you.
You know who I am?
To judge by the clothes, the unexpected arrival, and the manner of your greeting, I can only conclude that I know exactly who you are. I take it there's a police box somewhere in the vicinity.
You're getting better at this, aren't you, Brigadier?
Well, I've had some experience, haven't I? Well, Doctor, any joy?
I'm not sure about joy, Brigadier.
Why, what have you found in the Professor's specimen trays? Irrefutable evidence of imps and goblins?
What makes you say that?
Oh, just the local hocus-pocus, you know. Cornish pixies and so forth. They lay it on rather thick for the tourists around here.
Do they?
Oh, yes. Apparently, the local name for the fugu is the Pixies' Hall.
When it comes to the character of the Brigadier, there are usually 4 different versions that you usually see. You have his original persona, which is definitely one of his strongest and why he became so iconic. Even if he didn't believe the Doctor, he was always prepared to give him the benefit of the doubt because he trusted him. You have his later 70s persona, which, while still good, often was used for comedic effect and sometimes was given skepticism for the sake of the story, which didn't really match with what we'd seen of him before. The last 2 kind of fall into the same category but do different things with the Brigadier. You have what most New Who fans know, his more nostalgic appearance, looking back fondly at the Doctor and his time at UNIT. you know, stuff like the Five Doctors and his appearance on the Sarah Jane Adventures. And the flip side, you have his retired, more prepared to take action into his own hands and free from the rules and restrictions of the unit, is allowed to embrace all the things he wasn't able to do while under orders. And that's where he falls under in this particular story. So it's nice to see him experienced and used to all the nonsense that comes with the Doctor and aliens, and is more prepared to get right into it rather than waiting behind a desk for orders.
The Doctor has a brilliant mind, and many years of experience have taught me that it's best to listen to him.
I have never been spoken to in that tone of voice.
I agree the Doctor can occasionally be a little forthright.
He was arrogant.
Single-minded, perhaps. Maybe even a little vain, but arrogant? No, I don't think so. Arrogance is a kind of foolishness, and believe me, the Doctor is no fool.
Another notable member of the cast, which you may not be familiar with, but I was really glad to see, was James Bolem as the character of Sir Archibald. You may not be familiar with him, but I know him from stuff like New Tricks, and most notably as the narrator of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. That is my favourite version of that story, and I'd say he's my favourite performance as Willy Wonka.
This is incredible. What is it?
It's my laboratory, Dr. Smythe. Do you like it?
Sir Archibald, what are you doing in here?
Isn't that the very question I ought to be asking you, Dr. Smythe?
Yes, that is rather difficult to explain, isn't it?
I feel confident that you'll give it a go.
Well, you did say I could come back whenever I liked.
Call me an old traditionalist, but I had rather naively imagined that you might have come to the front door and rung the bell.
An additional detail that I'm going to discuss is the tone of the story. I wouldn't say it's overtly scary or creepy to listen to. I was quite nervous about listening to this, as growing up I remember being quite scared of the trailer and the voice of the Goblin Sankrida. However, listening to it, for the most part, it's fairly fine to listen to, though with a lot of Big Finish, especially these early releases, they are able to get away with more horrific and violent actions, and there are some quite brutal instances of people being killed in this story, which may unsettle some people. Particularly, there's a character who ends up being eaten alive by their own pet dogs towards the end, which is quite difficult to listen to. But to conclude, this is a fairly decent story, which is propelled to greatness thanks to its cast, and I wouldn't say it deserves to be in the top 5 compared to some of the more experimental or better written releases with the Sixth Doctor, but it is definitely a strong release that I recommend to more casual Doctor Who fans if you're not looking for something quite so dramatic or dark as compared to something like Project Lazarus, which I would say would be better deserved to be in the top 5 purely down to it probably featuring Colin Baker's best performance as the Doctor. But I'd be interested to see what your thoughts are on it, so check it out, and if you've already heard it, let me know what you think of it in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.